About these Lakers getting crushed by 25, salty in Salt Lake City there. It was showtime for Donovan Mitchell, though. 31, 10, and 8. He's been spectacular. The purple and gold now have lost 4 straight. Of course, Anthony Davis has not been available, though. So, Stephen A., are you giving L.A. a pass last night just based on all the injuries they've been dealing with?
For me personally, no. If you want to go first, Max, I'll let you. But for me personally, I'm not giving the Lakers a pass. Not based off of what I saw last night. Max, if you want to go first, go ahead, because I got a lot to say. But go ahead, Max.
Well, I would just say, I mean, it makes no difference to me. If you want to respond to it, then the answer is yes, of course they get a pass. Of course they get a pass, because this team was constructed top-heavy. They don't have a big 3. They got a big 2. Not just a big 2, a giant 2, an MVP 2, an historically great 2. But what that means is the rest of the roster is going to be a little thinner than some other rosters. Now, I know you look at when LeBron and AD are there, they don't look thin. They have a lot of guys doing a lot of things, but the presence of those two enable those guys to do those things. You know who else isn't there? Dennis Schroeder. And the thing about any team is you need several players who can do the following. They have to be able to get you into your offense and go get their own shot. If they can't create that way in those two ways combined, really, you got a problem. No team has no one like that in their offense. They wouldn't be able to play in the league. The Lakers really have 2 guys like that in the offense, LeBron and Schroeder. Why is LeBron playing so many minutes? Because without Schroeder, they got 1 guy, and now they don't have AD. So all those complementary pieces, it's not the same. You know, I love Talen Horton-Tucker, and he can create for himself, but is he going to really create for others? Everyone else is a role player to one degree or another, to one degree of effectiveness or another in their role, but they're role players. And so you really look at LeBron and a bunch of role players in a long season without the only other guy who can create and get you into the offense, without the other big 2 on his prime partner on a top-heavy team, and then they run into a buzzsaw. The Jazz are the hottest team in the league, playing the most perfect basketball in the league, and the Lakers are on the road. Yeah, they get a pass for last night.
I can't give them a pass, Max Kellerman, because I'm just looking at the manner in which they got destroyed. And we're going to get into the Utah Jazz a little bit later, but I will say this to America. The Utah Jazz have hit 53 pointers in the last 2 games. No team in NBA history, not even the Golden State Warriors, have done that. This team is scary. And I'm not going to lie, Max, I didn't see it. You know, we just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago when you were raving about the Utah Jazz. I didn't see it. I'm looking at Donovan Mitchell, and I said, I got to see it to believe it. I got to see it to believe it. I got to see it to believe it. And I look at the Lakers last night, and the reason why I don't give them a pass, it's not just because the Jazz were making shots. It's how little resistance they posed. You know what? You can struggle without Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder offensively. What's the excuse defensively? This is a Frank Vogel defensively coached team. Frank Vogel knows a thing or two about coaching defense. That's why he got the head coaching job to begin with, even though he wasn't the Lakers' first choice, because of the job that he did in Indiana all of those years when they were trying to compete for an Eastern Conference crown against LeBron James and Dwayne Wade's Miami Heat. But in the end, I look at the Los Angeles Lakers. Just because Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder's not there doesn't mean that you're supposed to forget how to play defense. Stay in front of your man. Stay with your man. Not letting everybody have a damn layup line, for crying out loud, or get wide open 3-point shots. Where's the defensive intensity? Where's the pride? Where's the pride? And I'm not talking about LeBron James. I'm not talking about him at all, because the man shows up. And let's give credit where credit is due. He just didn't have any help. I'm looking at everybody else in between. I'm looking at a Morris. I'm looking at a Contavious Caldwell-Pope. I'm looking at an Alex Caruso. I'm looking at all of these other guys. I'm just saying, defense for the most part is about effort. And when the Jazz show up, I understand that Rudy Gobert is a force. I understand that Donovan Mitchell is a stud. Mike Conley Jr. didn't miss a shot in the first half. Okay? And I'm just looking at them right now. For the first 6, at halftime, the Utah Jazz had went 6 quarters hitting 43 threes. I understand that's a problem until I'm looking and I'm saying, damn, how much more wide open can they be? Now, there's a lot that goes into that. And again, we'll get into that when we get into the subject on the Utah Jazz. But in the end, I'm going to look at the Los Angeles Lakers. You're champions. And yes, a regular season game, and I'm not going to overblow it. I'm simply talking about, if you know you don't have Anthony Davis, and you know you don't have Dennis Schroeder, and Rajon Rondo is no longer there, and Dwight Howard is no longer there, and JaVale McGee is no longer there, I'm going to blame one or two things. I'm going to blame effort, or I'm going to blame Rob Pelinka. Because you can't lose both of McGee and Dwight Howard, even though Montrezl Harrell is what you added to the mix. You can't. It's either effort or it's the fact that those dudes ain't there, and you have no rim protection whatsoever. It's one or the other. But either way you slice it, as good as Utah is and as good as they look, it's about the Lakers too. And as we sit here and talk about the Lakers, Max, that's what I walk away looking at. Effort or, you let two bigs get away that you shouldn't have let get away.
Well, it's fair to say, hey, guys, you got to step up. KCP, Caruso, everybody, you got to step up, especially with also in Schroeder's absence. The fact is they're missing two of their three best players. If you had to take a third best player on the team, certainly a third most important player, to me it's Schroeder. They don't have AD and they don't have Schroeder. That's one. Two, remember when I said there's a silver lining in AD's injury provided he comes back as AD? Because you're right when you say he better come back as AD. They ain't going to beat the Nets. That's right. But maybe not the Jazz. But provided he comes back as AD, what'd I say? LeBron in Cleveland and in Miami in recent years, last 6 or 7 years, early in the season, he's trying to figure out what he needs to do to lead a group of guys to the promised land, because he's in the finals every year. So he always figures it out. But early on, sometimes we'll see, remember back in the day, the Heat don't have a great record. The Cavs don't have a great record because he's figuring it out. He needs to know who I can rely on, like who can LeBron rely on? What positions does he need to put them in so if they fail at one thing, they can succeed at another? And he usually takes it's an incubation period, basically, with LeBron. I think we're also seeing that. There's some fatigue, yes. You're right, some guys need a little more effort would be nice. But really, it's AD's not there, and Schroeder's not there, and LeBron's trying to figure the rest of these guys out. And they're on the road. They ran into a buzzsaw. Stephen A., they get a pass from me.
Like I said, I'm never going to give anybody a pass when I'm questioning your effort. When I'm questioning your effort, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, see, offense is about skill. It's not just about effort. It's about talent/skill. That's what it's about. Defense primarily is about effort, particularly now. If Donovan Mitchell had exploded for 50 points, Max Kellerman, we have a different discussion here. He's just a stud, and there's nothing you can do about it. But he's got 18. Mike Conley's got 16 to 18. Bogdanovich got 15. You know what I'm saying? They hit about 23 threes, and, just spreading the ball around, people wide open, standing in the corner, taking pictures, calling their girls before they take a three-point shot and what have you. It's like, damn, where you at? Did you even show up to Utah? Did you not know this was going to be a primetime game? Nationally televised. You didn't know? You didn't see it coming? You got to show up. Got to show up.
And Stephen A., I'm looking at this Jazz. I'm looking at the Jazz schedule right now. Let me just reel off some of the names, because the only team they lost to recently were the Clippers, and that was the Clippers at full force for the first time in forever, right? Okay, and that was a close game after they beaten the Clippers. So the Jazz beat the Celtics, beat the Bucks, beat the Heat, who are resurgent right now, beat the Sixers, the best team in the East, beat the Clippers before they lost to them, and they beat them by a wider margin than they lost to them, destroyed the Hornets, and then just destroyed the Lakers. In other words, this is a ridiculously hot team. You said it yourself. 53s in 2 games. This didn't all come against the Lakers. They just ran into a buzzsaw at the worst possible time.
All right, so let's go there, because the Jazz are the best team in the NBA right now, according to their record. They've won 22 of their last 24. Max, do you believe that they're the best team in the NBA at this moment?
Right now, yes, they're the best team in the NBA, and they're playing the best basketball. They've replaced the Lakers since AD went down. Remember, not that long ago, I kept saying it, the Lakers are the only team in the league absolutely elite on offense and defense. You heard Stephen A. just now. They ain't elite on defense right now, let alone on offense. You know who they've been replaced by? The Utah Jazz. Top 5 offensive and defensive efficiency. No one else in the NBA is. Now, Markieff Morris is right. The playoffs are a different story. You want to ask me if they beat a full-strength Lakers in the playoffs? Maybe, but I favor the Lakers. A full-strength Clippers in the playoffs? Maybe. A full strength Nets in the finals, different story. Sixers, I don't know. But I can tell you this. Right now, Stephen A., the comparisons to the great Spurs teams are apt. They're right. When I look at the construction of this team, look at the roster, Stephen A. Not only are they playing crazy, unselfish basketball, moving the ball, passing up good shots for great ones. Look at the roster construction. Remember how I always talk about, and you say, yup, Larry Brown used to say that Chris Paul must be Larry Brown's fantasy of a perfect point guard, right? Conley is some version of that. Right? He's kind of the perfect point guard. Donovan Mitchell is a star who, under pressure, is a superstar. And Joe Ingles was starting for them not all that long ago, and he is a good offensive player who's versatile on offense and a good enough defensive player. But he's been swapped out for Royce O'Neal. And on this version of the Jazz. And Royce O'Neal's the opposite. He's a good offensive player. He can hit shots. He's a willing passer who's a great, versatile defensive player, right? So everywhere you look, you got a guy, yup, I want that guy. The Bogdanovich, obviously, on offense. And then Gobert is a useful offensive player who's a great defensive player. That's just the starting five. Look at the veterans they have coming off their bench now. I mentioned Ingles. Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson has entered his prime now. He always had promise. He was aggressive, but he was like a good player on bad teams. And obviously a guy like that wants to start and be a star. He's 28 years old. His skills are as complete as they're ever going to be, it seems to me, in terms of also his physical prime. And the dude has accepted that as a sixth man, with the knowledge he now has, he's shooting 8-9 threes a game and hitting like 40% of them. Stephen A., guys like that off the bench, this team is an extremely well-coached team and a well-oiled machine on both sides of the floor. They're the best team right now.
That's what I was actually waiting for you to get to that last part, because that is the part. And I just want to throw off some names, because I've never done this in the history of First Take. I've never done this. I want to read off the names of Utah's coaching staff. Alex Jensen, Mike Wells, Lamar Skeeter, Vince LaGarza, Sergey Oliva. Dell Demps, the former GM in New Orleans, is now an assistant coach with Utah. And Keyon Dooling, just a certified life coach. This brother is a special brother, really, really good brother, got a great head on his shoulders and really does a lot of stuff. And just getting guys mentally prepared to perform. Keyon Dooling was one of those dudes with the NBPA and all of that stuff. He's a special person. Got a lot of love and respect for him. And it's great that they have him on their staff as well, because he can help any staff in the NBA. And all of this is led by head coach Quinn Snyder, who was a college coach. I just want to make sure that I state this for the record. This man is an exceptional coach, and their staff is doing an exceptional job. This might be the best staff in basketball, because every single player, tell me one player that looks worse since it's under their stewardship. One player. There's no one that looks worse. Everybody looks better. And that's what you're seeing here. I'm looking at a guy like Royce O'Neal. Why does he matter? Because he's your perimeter defender. You got Rudy Gobert. He's an elite defender, the post two-time defensive player of the year. Probably going to win it again this year. I mean, the dude is formidable. So you got defense on the perimeter. You got defense in the interior. And as a result of that, they're going to create their own opportunities, because they're limiting you to one shot. They're forcing turnovers. They're never shy with effort. Ever. We're talking about the Lakers. We're talking about Boston and others. Effort. We never say that about Utah. Effort, effort, effort. And so we know we got Donovan Mitchell. We know what a stud he is. We know what Mike Conley can do. But Mike Conley's been a veteran. We were talking about him potentially retiring. This brother looks great. He looks better than he did last year.
He looked bad last year.
He looks better than he did last year. He looks better. You don't see that usually with veterans. I mean, you can literally, he was so bad last year, you can make an argument Mike Conley come back player of the year. I mean, that's how good he looks right now. Okay? So I'm looking at all of these things.
Doubt.
And I just want to take a moment before I say what I'm going to say to give the Utah Jazz coaching staff a hell of a lot of love, because they really, really deserve it. Having said that, I still don't give a damn. I ain't jumping off the Brooklyn bandwagon yet. When I sit up there and I look at last night, for example, and I see how the Lakers had no answer, let's just say that is the least of my concerns when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets offense. I ain't worried about them. I ain't worried about them offensively. You might try to outscore them. You're going to have to figure out something. Let's see what Royce O'Neal does when Kyrie is on the perimeter. Or James Harden. Let's see what Rudy Gobert does when Kevin Durant is on the perimeter somewhere. Because you got to remember, Brooklyn don't have to play around with Utah in the interior. Brooklyn can sit up there and shoot you out of the gym without even sniffing in Rudy Gobert's direction. And DeAndre
yeah, but Utah
Jordan
can too.
And by the way, with DeAndre Jordan's age-old self, the brother still got hops. He's got size on him. He's got strength. You can't just push him around. And Rudy Gobert, it wouldn't be that easy for Rudy Gobert to go against him. I'm just saying, as great as the Jazz look, and they look phenomenal, I'm still not willing to say they look better than the Brooklyn Nets right now.
This is what I'll say, Stephen
right.
A. The fact is, the Nets have KD coming back.
Yeah.
They're doing this without Kevin Durant.
Correct.
So, obviously, we say right now. Because if they're doing this without KD, ain't going to be no Jazz better than the Nets when KD gets back.
I'm glad you know.
Right
you didn't sound
now,
like you knew.
Right now, the Jazz are the best team in the league. Right now, the Jazz are the best team in the league. By the way, and Gobert rolling to the basket, what do the Nets have to really counteract that?
I will remind you, the Nets have won 7 straight.
53s. That's one team that can shoot with the Nets.
The Nets have won 7 straight.
They blew
I'm sorry, Stephen A. My ear went out. I'm going to have to reconnect.
Cool. Don't worry about it. It's all right.
Okay. You reconnect, and we're going to get in a break. By the way, though, I know we're talking about the East, but let's get back to the West. 500 at 15-17. They have now lost 6 of 8, falling to the Hawks last night. Atlanta's been beating some good teams. But remember, no Kemba, no Smart, or no Langford last night. Stephen A., talk to me. Do you think Brad Stevens should be feeling the heat and be on the hot seat at this point?
Yeah, because I think he is feeling the heat. Basketball operations, Danny Ainge has been making the rounds locally, talking about the team. He tried not to point the finger at Brad Stevens, but he did highlight that he believes that this team is talented enough, that they're about winning, that the situation right now is unacceptable. He expected better from them. He believes he's got a roster that mandates they should be better than how they have looked. You've got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, 2 young stars in this league. No doubt hold on the ball a little bit too long, which will explain why they're 28th out of 30 teams in the NBA in terms of assists. They're just not passing the ball and distributing the ball with the fluidity that they need to do it. And we all get that. But in the end, maybe they're not doing it because they don't have faith in the people around them, because they don't believe in what's transpiring as we speak. This certainly is not a problem that they had in the past. Why the hell would they have it now? They're having it now because they don't believe in the people around them, or they don't believe in the system that Brad Stevens has implemented. And Brad Stevens, like I said before, I think he's a damn good coach. He knows his X's and O's. I thought it was a tremendous hire on Danny Ainge's part years ago to grab him from the University of Butler, where he took them, a small school, to back-to-back national title game appearances. I have tremendous respect for Brad Stevens, and I hope it works out for him. But I think last night in that post-game conference, the things that you saw him say and the manner in which he spoke, if you cover Brad Stevens, and people, Max, in Boston would be more apt and more qualified to speak about this than me, but I dare venture to say I've never seen him come across that way. He came across as somebody who's thoroughly concerned about what's transpiring. And Danny Ainge alluded to this as well. He spoke to a lack of effort. Let me tell y'all something right now. In all my years of covering sports, anytime an executive speaks about lack of effort, that is an indictment against the coach.
Look out.
There is no way around it. When they say it's a lack of effort, that is the coach's job. The coach's job is to make sure that the one thing you never say is that his teams don't look like they're playing hard. They don't look like they care enough. It doesn't look like it matters to them as much as it should. Even though those exact words were not used, because I don't have the quote from Danny Ainge right in front of me, I can assure you what I heard him say alluded to those things. That is when a coach is in trouble, because I'm here to tell you something right now. They had a chance to get James Harden before he was traded to Brooklyn. The Houston Rockets, I'm telling you what my sources told me, the Houston Rockets wanted Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. Danny Ainge wasn't trying to hear that because Danny Ainge believes that what he has is good enough to compete for a championship. I personally interviewed Jaylen Brown on my SportsCenter show with Stephen A. at the beginning of the season. What was he talking about? Championship expectations, nothing less. And here they are, a game below 500. It is unacceptable. They are better than that, regardless of Kemba's situation and Marcus Smart's situation. They are better than a 500 team, and they are one game below 500. That is unacceptable. Brad Stevens knows it. Danny Ainge knows it. And even though Danny Ainge tried to point the finger at himself in the end, we know he don't mean that. We know what he means. He's talking about Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens could be in trouble if he doesn't get this steered in the right direction. But I'm rooting for him to do so because I really like him. And I really think he's a good coach. But you got to be able to galvanize the troops and make sure you peel out of them what's inside of them if you're a head coach and being a leader of men. And this year, that has not shown to be the case. I think he's in trouble.
Before I respond to you, you said SportsCenter with Stephen A. And when and where can we find that, Stephen A?
Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN. My SportsCenter show, my NBA
7
show.
p.m. Eastern Standard, SportsCenter with Stephen A.
Yeah.
Right, just
Not
wanted
Stephen
to make
A's
sure
world.
in case someone was wondering.
Not Stephen A's World, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays on ESPN
ESPN Plus. Yeah.
SportsCenter with Stephen A. on Wednesdays on ESPN, yes. Most Wednesdays.
Gotcha. There you go. The question is, should Brad Stevens be on the hot seat? I agree with your analysis that's exactly right. Nail on the head. You hear the GM start talking about effort, that's already a problem for the coach. The water's starting to get hot, if not boiling. I'm not saying whether or not he is. I'm saying, should Brad Stevens be on the hot seat? No, he shouldn't be on the hot seat. This is much more on Danny Ainge than Brad Stevens. Danny Ainge has not been able to get this team over the hump. He's had plenty of talent. He's very good at collecting talent and putting together a winning situation. He has not been very good at getting them over the top to win a championship. And he's had chances. It's one time that they got a big three together in the absence of any other big three in the league, and they won one. That's it. Otherwise, and I think Danny Ainge is an excellent executive, but there are levels. And this is much more on him. Stephen A., just what I said about the Lakers applies to the Celtics here. No AD, but also no Schroeder, right? Your team needs someone, usually the backcourt, who can go get their own shot when they need to. They can just create. They can create for others. They can create for themselves. Get you into the offense. And who's missing on the Celtics right now? Kemba Walker's got a jacked up knee. He has not been the same. Like a couple of games here and there, he showed flashes. This ain't Kemba Walker. And Marcus Smart literally isn't on the floor. And Marcus Smart is interesting because you don't think of him as like the classic point guard and creative offensively and everything. But he is a point guard, right? Like that is a position he plays on the court. And when you talk about effort and diving for loose balls, that's also Marcus Smart. So you really don't have the heart and soul of your team right now, and you also don't have one of your three best offensive players in Kemba, and you don't have either of your best two ball handlers, creators. Now, so when you talk about Brad Stevens, should people look at him and be critical? Of course. Everyone's always evaluated, Brad Stevens included. Do I think that they run too many ISOs? Yes, I do. I know they have players who can go get theirs, but I think it's too many ISO sets. Do I think they could start Time Lord, right, at the 5 and play him 30-plus minutes as the starting 5? I like Tice, but yes, I do. I think he can do things better, in my opinion. And probably some of the things I think are wrong, too, right? There's always second-guessing and evaluation. But I can't pin this team right now on the guy who's trying to coach them without his backcourt. I got to look at the GM. I got to look at the GM and roster construction, which, as you said, he thought they could compete. There's a difference. In the NBA, Stephen A., if you want to win a championship, if you're thinking this team can compete, you don't have a chance. You need overwhelming offensive firepower. And if Kemba's not right, the Celtics don't have anything close to that.
Max Kellerman, I respectfully, let me explain to you why I think you're totally wrong on this. We're not having a conversation about Brad Stevens and his level of competence. The man has won 56% of his games. This is his 8th season in Boston. He's won 56% of his games. He's been to the playoffs the last 6-7 years. They've gone to the conference finals 3 of the last 4 years, including last year. Brad Stevens can coach. That's not the issue here. The issue is that do you get to a point where the same voice no longer affects you positively? If Brad Stevens lost his job today as head coach of the Boston Celtics, Brad Stevens should be one of the people at the top of the list for a new coaching job on the NBA or the collegiate level. He's that good. And so this is not about that. This is about the fact that you do get to a point where there's a new voice needs to be heard. In an extreme manner, Max, there came a point in time where Dallas needed to move beyond Tom Landry. There came a point in time where the Miami Dolphins needed to move beyond Don Shula. There's going to come a point in time where San Antonio might want to move beyond Greg Popovich. Can't see that anytime soon, but it's possible. Larry Brown had that day. There are coaches that have that time. Chuck Daly, even though he departed from Detroit on his own accord, bottom line, he ended up in Orlando. Sometimes it's just a new voice. And what I'm saying to you is that with Jaylen Brown, 24, approaching 25 years of age, and Jason Tatum at about 21, 22 years of age, and being young studs, they're kind of old around Brad Stevens. And what I mean by that is same voice, nothing fresh, nothing new. And if you're Danny Ainge, as an executive, you have to look at that because the issue is they're not even a 500 team. That's the issue. And if it's that bad, why is it that bad? Why do we look that bad? And then Kemba Walker's not there and Marcus Smart. This is basketball. Two dudes who are studs can have you playing above 500. The New York Knicks don't have either one of them. They got a similar record. Why? Because Thibodeau is a fresh voice that they needed, and they surrounded him with the right culture, and as a result, that's what you're looking at right now. I'm being serious. I'm not bragging about the Knicks. There's nothing to brag about yet. But it's a culture change. And sometimes you got to take into consideration the culture change is what we're talking about rather than the competence of the coach.
That's all you got it on that one. You got the same record as the Knicks. It's a problem. You got the same record as the Knicks. That's a problem. I'm just looking at Ainge and you're looking at Stevens. But, the same record as the Knicks. P.U.
Yeah.
No excuse for that with Tatum and Brown.
They need Kemba to be Kemba.
No excuse.
All right. They allowed 23 threes last night. That's 4 straight. Big Perk in the building. Kendrick. Top of the morning, more like afternoon, depending where you live right now. Good to see you. I'm going to start with you here, Kendrick. I'm going to switch things up.
Molly,
go ahead.
Molly,
Yeah.
Before you start, all right, let me just say this. Vucevic, because it tickled Stephen A. yesterday because I couldn't get it out. But this ain't no damn English class anyway. We talking basketball, so sometimes I may mess up names, but I was working on it last night. Vucevic, I got it. All right, there we go.
Yeah, some of those Eastern European
names.
I appreciate you putting in effort, and making it happen. Don't worry, Stephen A. still can't say my last name. He's still working on it. We're on year 10 right now.
Rose.
All right, you're up. Yeah, you can say Rose. That's great. Max got it. Are you giving the Lakers a pass for last night, Perk?
Yeah, you got to give them a pass. Look, let's not overreact to these 4 losses, and let's not overreact to them losing to the best team in basketball, which is the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz is putting everybody over their lap right now and giving them a spanking, especially when they go into Salt Lake City. Let us all remember, yes, I know Anthony Davis is out, but they are missing Dennis Schroeder, who is a huge part of this team and the Lakers' success. The only guy besides LeBron James that is able to create for himself and create for others. Here's another thing. When you're the defending champs, being a former champ myself, every team is going to give you their best shot every single night. And right now, the Lakers they're not at full strength, and they got to be prepared to get everybody's best shot. And last night, going into that Utah game, I knew they were going to lose. I thought they probably would have beat by 50 due to not having Dennis Schroeder and how great of a team the Utah Jazz are. But here's the thing. This right here proved me wrong because I gave Rob Pelinka so much credit and said that the Lakers won in the offseason, but this has been a blessing in disguise for everyone, including the Lakers, because right now we're seeing that their role players are really not like that. This is our audition for them. And it's time for them to upgrade even more. Go out there and add more shooting. Maybe could go get a guy like AJ Reddick. And they miss JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Much respect to Marcus Gasol, but he's not it right now. Well, he can't guard pick and rolls. He's not a live threat at the rim. So you may have to go out and try to get a Hassan Whiteside or Andre Drummond. I knew going into that game last night that the Lakers were going to lose because they're shorthanded and Utah is a great team. So, yes, I am giving them a pass.
I'm not giving them a pass. And the reason why I'm not giving them a pass is because of what I saw from them defensively. Utah is a great team. They move the basketball exceptionally well. They're exceptionally well coached. I certainly can understand why the Lakers have problems offensively, but defensively, I'm going to look at them. They got blown out last night. And oh, by the way, in 9 of their last 10 games, they've given up at least 104 points. And they've been giving up triple digits on a regular over the last 9 to 10 games or so. So I'm looking at things from that perspective, and I think it's about effort. Certainly, offensively, you're going to have your struggles, and I totally understand it. And there are adjustments that Frank Vogel has to make until Rob Pelinka can get him some more help in the trade or whatever the case may be before the trading deadline expires specifically. We can deal with all of those things. But I'm just looking at things from an effort standpoint on the defensive side of the ball. I certainly don't expect them to look but so bad. I don't expect to witness wide open shots. I don't expect the interior to look like a layup line. You know, I don't expect those kind of things. I expect more from the Lakers in that regard. And that's all I mean. It's nothing to be overly alarmed about. We understand the loss of Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder is significant. We get that. I definitely agree with you, Big Perk, that Pelinka and those boys got to go out because of the audition that these guys have been going through. A lot of them aren't measuring up to snuff. All of that's true. But Frank Vogel is a head coach in the National Basketball Association because of what he preaches and what he teaches on the defensive side of the ball. And I didn't see much of that last night, and that was my issue.
Of course the Lakers get a pass for last night. Look, Perk said it. They're on the road against the hottest, if not best team in basketball right now. If you had to say at this moment, not who you think's going to win the chip, anything, at this moment, who's the best team? It's Utah. They have replaced the Lakers since the AD injury as the only elite team on both ends of the floor. They're absolutely elite on both ends of the floor. And when you look at this roster, everywhere you look, there's a dude who makes a real positive contribution. Mike Conley's like an ideal point guard. Donovan Mitchell is a star and a bona fide superstar when you need him most. And even the fact that Ingles isn't starting, he's off the bench. And you have Royce O'Neal. They're like mirror images of each other, both competent on both sides of the floor. But Ingles is versatile offensively and good defensively, whereas Royce O'Neal is versatile defensively and good enough offensively. But O'Neal's defense is ridiculous, and he can really shoot the three. You look at every position, there's someone who's really making a positive contribution. Obviously, Gobert, rolling to the basket, and the defense is there. Everywhere you look, they got a guy. So that's the Jazz right now. They're firing on all cylinders. Stephen A., you called out the coaching staff by name to give them their props, not just Quinn Snyder. I totally agree. They're a well-coached team being compared to the Spurs from several years ago, the way they move the ball, play unselfishly, the whole thing. And the Lakers, Perk hit it again. I brought it up at the top of the show. AD's gone. You're top heavy. You got two superstars. They make the role players better. One of those dudes is gone. But then also your third best player is gone. And Schroeder is the only guy other than LeBron. What I say earlier, he can not only get his own shot, but he can create for others. I know Taylor Horton Tucker's trying to do his thing. He can get his own shot, but is he really the guy who's going to be creating for others? So the Lakers are right now dead in the water against a team that's setting records, hitting threes every night. What are they supposed to do?
Big Perk, I'll be the first to admit, man, I'm kind of spoiled in this regard. When I was a beat writer for the Philadelphia 76ers covering Allen Iverson and the crew, Allen Iverson was your lone offensive force. The George Lynch, the Eric Snows, the Aaron McKees, the Kevin Mutombos of the world, the people like that. They could give you buckets every now and then, but the bottom line is they were basically a defensive-minded team. You knew that there were limitations offensively. But what Larry Brown, the great Larry Brown, the Hall of Famer that is Larry Brown, taught me is that when you have effort on the defensive end of the floor, you'd be surprised what you can do. And you may not always win, but you're always going to be in it. And when I see the Lakers give up 39 points in the second quarter and I see them basically bow out that early, that's what I'm looking at here when I'm talking about effort. I'm not looking at things just schematically. I'm not looking at just talent. I'm looking at the fact that you know what the circumstances and the situation is walking in to that particular encounter and what you've been looking at since you knew Anthony Davis would be out over the last 10 games. And I'm watching you defensively wilt. And that's what I'm keeping my eyes on, because I think a lot of that is about effort more so than anything else. And I'm not talking about LeBron James, because he don't owe us that. He gives what he's got, okay, and he needs help. But you got to help him.
Yeah, and look, Stephen A., that's a great point. But I'm going to say this. Last night game, it was just that the Utah Jazz, that young group, Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, those guys are just more athletic. Youth legs like Kyle Kuzma, Caldwell Pope, Wesley Matthews. It's nothing that they could have done with those guys last night. And I get what you're saying. It was times where the Lakers had lapses on the defensive end. I kept wondering to myself, how many times are they going to keep giving up lobs to Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors at the basket? But that's just a testament to how good and how dangerous the Utah Jazz is. And look, you brought up a good point earlier in the show when I was watching. The Utah Jazz are shooting 42 threes a game, and they're hitting 40% of them. I mean, you got to honor the three because they are lighting it up. And with that, you have a dynamic guy in Donovan Mitchell who has took a tremendous leap from last year. I'm not talking about him being able to get buckets. We know he all could score the basket. I'm talking about now he has taken that next step to superstar. What the great KG used to always tell me, you know how you could superstars separate themselves is when they start making others around them better. And that's what he's doing right now.
Jordan
This Utah Jazz team is just serious.
Jordan Clarkson is six-man candidate of the year. Jordan Clarkson looks better than I've ever seen him look.
He's right. He's actually excellent now. Not just
Shout
scoring for a bad team. He's an excellent player.
Big Perk, I asked the guys this earlier in the show. The Celtics have been struggling. They've lost 8 of 11. They were trailing at the half 72-49, went to lose by 15 to the Hawks. Perk, you think Brad Stevens should be on the hot seat right now?
Hell yeah, he should be on the hot seat. And look, here's the sensitive subject for me, because you know how embedded I am with the Boston Celtics and the city of Boston. You know, that's my home away from home. But yes, because I'm watching this Celtic team and they lack accountability. When you have an old guy, old veteran like Gallinari, who lights you up for 38 points last night, and I'm not taking nothing away from him because he still can shoot the ball, but you have enough athletic wings in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Shimmy Ojale, Grant Williams to actually go out there and guard him, and they're not doing it. It shows me that Brad Stevens is just getting walked over. They talking about, oh, it's not Brad Stevens. That's not his demeanor. He's not a guy that hollers. Then what the hell are you here for if you're not going to hold guys accountable? I watched Jason Tatum last night and games before that. Oh, pout and complain to the referees, take bad shot after bad shot. I watched Jaylen Brown not sprint back on defense. That's lack of accountability. That is coaching, not getting on their superstar players. And then to top it off, you watch a guy, and I love Tristan Thompson. I'm watching him catch the ball at the free throw line area. And he's trying to show everybody that he could go between his legs and take a guy off the dribble. That's lack of accountability, and that's saying I could do what I want as a role player. And that's disturbing. I'm watching Daniel Tice walk into three-pointers at the beginning of shot clocks. As soon as they cross half court, the ball swung his way. Instead of him going into a quick dribble handoff, he's stepping into a three-point shot.
Question for you, Big Perk. Brett, question for you, Big Perk. I'm going to give you my time because I want you. Question for you. If that was Doc Rivers instead of Brad Stevens, could you tell a national audience what would have happened if the stuff you pointed out was happening with Tatum and Tice and all of those? What would Doc Rivers have done?
if that was Doc Rivers, and what happened?
And those things that you just explained guys were doing on the basketball court with no accountability. If that was Doc Rivers, your coach in Boston when y'all won the title in '08, when you went to the finals in a Game 7 in 2010, what would Doc Rivers have done if stuff like that was happening?
Oh, he would have met us at half court. He would have called timeout and would have met you at half court and got on you. I remember one time I called myself taking a free throw line jump shot. Doc subbed me out in the first 2 minutes of the game and told me, know your role, be a star in your role, and set me to the second half and put Big Baby in. But look, here's another thing. Guess what? If that was Doc Rivers right now coaching this team, this same team minus Gordon Hayward that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, this Celtic team that we wouldn't be surprised, got high hopes to maybe come out of the Eastern Conference, he would be on the hot seat and people would be calling for his job. Hell, he might be fired by now. So don't give me all this. This is not Brad demeanor. What is he there for? What is he there for if he's not going to hold people accountable?
I would say this, Perk. I would say this. There is legitimate criticism of Brad Stevens. You know, like start with Robert Williams. Why isn't he starting at the 5? He should be starting, and they should ride him as long as they can for his defense.
No.
They should. There are things that I disagree with Brad Stevens here and there. Everyone can do a better job, and everyone's up for evaluation, including Brad Stevens. But the bottom line is, the Celtics kind of get a pass too, like the Lakers. Kemba Walker is not Kemba Walker. Hasn't been this season. Let's be honest. And they got 3 guys they get their offense from. And right now, I'm not making excuses for guys for not hustling. But Marcus Smart is the linchpin of the defense in that way. He's also the other guy who can handle in the backcourt. So you're missing 2 pieces that help your team go. The Celtics don't have the margin for error that other elite teams do. They can't have no real Kemba Walker and also not Marcus Smart.
No, Max.
And then also not get a good enough effort. I agree with, but
Max,
that's more roster construction than coaching.
They got their 2 all-stars. They got their 2 rising stars in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
They're supposed to have 3.
They have 0 excuses for being 2 games under 500 in the Eastern Conference.
Let me get in here. Max Kellerman, you're wrong. And the reason why you're wrong is because if we're sitting here and we're talking about a team that's winning, but they may not make it back to the conference finals, that's a different argument. We're talking about a Boston Celtics team that's under 500. There is no excuse for a team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in the sport of basketball to be under 500. That is about the coach not having the pulse of the team. Because we know that Brad Stevens knows what he's doing. We know that he knows what he's doing from an X's and O's standpoint. They've been to the conference finals 3 times in the last 4 years. He's won 56% of his games. We know that he knows what he's doing. So what is it? There does come a point in time where you have to ask yourself the question, are you the voice in the ear of the player that can get them to maximize whatever potential they have? And what KP is pointing to, what Kendrick Perkins is pointing to, is a coach. Nobody's questioning his acumen. Nobody's questioning his competence. Nobody's questioning what his resume. What you're looking at right now is saying, are these players tuning him out? Danny Ainge is going around the public circuit in Boston talking about, we're not giving effort. We're not giving enough effort. When the executive of the team is talking about the effort of the players, without saying so, he is talking about the coach. Because that is the coach's job, to make sure that you are maxed out effort-wise. And that's not what's happening in Boston right now. And if it were anybody else, we'd say something.
That's fair, but guys, they have a couple of real good scoring wing guys, right? They run too many ISOs, and as I said, certain guys could be getting more minutes. The real issue is the guy who's really supposed to organize and coordinate the offense isn't really there in Kemba. It hasn't been Kemba this year. And the heart and soul of the defense is really Marcus Smart. And he's not there either. So you can point to Brad Stevens, and I'm not saying you're not making legitimate points. But before you do, I have to look at the roster. That's Danny Ainge. And I got to look at injuries.
Not if you're under 500. Not if you're under 500.
But Max, you gotta look at how the Celtics been playing. Look, 2 nights ago, they played the New Orleans Pelicans, okay? They were up 24 points. And the New Orleans Pelicans came and walked it down and had the best comeback in franchise and beat the Boston Celtics. Do you know the Celtics right now in 7 straight games have given up 30-plus points to individuals? So they're coming in and saying, you know what? We can get whatever the hell we want. And Max, on my side, away from ESPN, you know what I do, right, Max? I cover the Celtics game. I do the Celtics broadcast for the local network. So I got a close eye on them. I'm watching these rotations. I'm watching these guys not fight to get up over screens, not sprint back in transition, not boxing out, not closing out to a guy like
and not
Gallinari,
hearing anything from the coach.
letting him have a field day. That's what I'm saying. And that, to me, it's a repeated cycle, and they're not hearing whatever the hell Brad Stevens is talking about in the film room, period.
Are you ready for this, KP? Other than you know who's the most popular voice we hear critiquing the Boston Celtics? Cornbread Maxwell. That's what we're hearing. We ain't hear from Brad Stevens. I mean, last night was the first time I've ever seen Brad Stevens look remotely demonstrative and concerned. Because guess what? He's starting to feel it now because enough noise is being made. But usually if you want to hear something that's wrong with the Boston Celtics, you need to look at Cedric Maxwell, Cornbread Maxwell. Call a game. Do a color on the games. That's who you need to look for. And now Kendrick Perkins. Because you damn sure wasn't getting it from Brad Stevens. You wasn't getting it from Danny Ainge. Where you been? And again, we know that Danny Ainge is an exceptional executive. We know that Brad Stevens has proven to be an exceptional coach. But do you have the ear and the pulse of your players? If not, guess what? You could have traded Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart for James Harden. Houston wanted to do that. Boston did not. You wanted to keep the people in place because Danny Ainge believes, and I think rightfully so, he did the right thing by not letting go of Jaylen Brown because I think he's a stud. But if you believe in Jaylen Brown and you believe in Jason Tatum, you can't find under 500 ball acceptable, Max. You cannot do that.
Jaylen Brown's having his best season. I mean, let's look at the development of the players. I've mentioned Robert Williams. They're missing both basically point guards on the team. And so they're a little under 500 in a division, in a conference that's gotten much better. So can Brad Stevens be doing more? Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, I pointed out a few things. But to use him as the fall guy right now, I don't think is right. I think roster construction, if I had to pick between Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens, Danny Ainge put the roster together. Danny Ainge is relying on all the offense from 3 dudes, and one of them's not there right now. He's hurt.
Yeah, but Max, I'm telling you this.
Let's keep it moving, guys.
They have more than enough, and they're not supposed to be 2 games under 500. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown has been there majority of the season.
They're finishing over 500.
Okay.
All right. Facts.
Let's
keep it rolling, guys. I said the Celtics lost 8 of 11. The Miami Heat have won 8 of 11, and that's where I want to go right now. Their 4th consecutive game after defeating the Toronto Raptors 116-108. Things looking good for Jimmy Buckets and the squad. Stephen A., what do you think of the Heat right now?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's about what we think about the Miami Heat. I think it should be about what we make of Stephen A. Smith, the ultimate motivator. I show up on national television last week. I'm saying, damn it, Miami, I'm trying to get to South Beach. What the hell is going on with y'all? Y'all sticking up the joint. And what do? They win 4 straight. Jimmy Butler, my brother, that way to go. All right, Tyler Hero and the crew. Bam Adebayo and the crew. Yeah. Excuse me, I was depressed enough. Hey, Max, Molly, who was more depressed than me? Than last year, the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Final, and because of COVID, we were stuck home.
Careful what you wish for.
I've waited 25 years, KP, to have a finals in South Beach and LA, South Beach and La La, and then it happens, but COVID holds us back. So now I'm looking for Miami this year, and I'm like, listen, Pat Rouse, Eric Spoelstra, even Tim Donovan, Rob Wilson and the crew, love y'all, Andy Ellsberg, you know, those Those are my brothers. Excuse me, I'm looking for Miami to do something. And I had to speak up against them. And once I spoke up, Stephen A., the ultimate motivator, the one that was summoned to Tuscaloosa by Nick Summoned, the one that was summoned to Clemson, all right, the one that sat up there and spoke out against the Miami Heat. I speak out, and the next thing you know, they undefeated. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, all I could say, Stephen A., sometimes if you don't
so
toot your own
stiff,
horn,
you need to use
no
one
music.
arm to lift the other arm. Come on, start stretching.
I get it. All I'll say is, isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing how Jimmy Butler and Goran Dragic get healthy and then suddenly the Heat's... Was Eric Spoelstra on the hot seat before this? Or did they get healthy and now they're better?
Excuse me.
Which
Eric
one?
Spoelstra
Or
is
should
a
Eric
two-time
Spoelstra have been on the hot
champion. Watch
seat?
your mouth. Eric Spoelstra's the two-time champion. Watch your mouth.
Hold on. By the way, Spoelstra's great, but give Brad Stevens, LeBron, and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and he'd win a championship too, at least one.
Max, let me say this. And I'm glad we went straight from the Celtics to the Heat, and now you sitting up here saying it's because of Goran Dragic being healthy and Jimmy Buckets, and rightfully so.
And Jimmy Butler.
It's about Eric Spoelstra, okay? It's about coaching. And let me tell you why. Who was starting at the beginning of the season, Max? Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero was not flourishing well at the starting point guard position. What did Coach Eric Spoelstra do? He inserted Kendrick Nunn. And